Imagine like sitting in your garage, fully suited up. You've got the fireproof balaclava pulled tight, your helmet strapped on so securely, you can literally hear your own heartbeat.
Oh, just the pure adrenaline before a race.
Exactly. Outside, the grid is forming for the dawn of a brand new era in Formula One. The grandstands in Shanghai are just absolutely roaring.
Yeah.
But you aren't out there. You're staring at a completely blank carbon fiber steering wheel because your multi-million-dollar machine is dead before the formation lap even begins.
Which is just terrifying for a driver.
That was the agonizing reality for the dominators of last year.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are stepping right into the DRS zone, going full throttle into the unprecedented absolute chaos of the 2026 Chinese Grand Prix.
Oh, it was absolute mayhem out there.
It really was. We are in a brand new regulation era. It's a sprint weekend, and the entire hierarchy of the sport has just been ripped to shreds. But before we launch into the analysis, I need to make this crystal clear for everyone listening. This segment is part of our news coverage of recent F1 events. Yeah, which is essential context for the sheer volume of, paradigm-shifting news we are about to process today. I mean, the grip levels, the power delivery, the aerodynamic concepts.
Everything.
Literally everything the teams thought they understood has been completely reset.
Exactly, because our mission for this deep dive into the weekend sources is to dissect a race that genuinely felt like witnessing a completely different sport. We are looking at the terrifying resurgence and dominance of Mercedes. We're diagnosing the shocking, catastrophic collapse of last year's untouchable titans, McLaren and Red Bull.
That was wild.
Right. And perhaps the most thrilling storyline of all, we are going to break down the clinical rebellion of the rookies who are actively dismantling the old guard.
What's fascinating here is how the new 2026 energy regeneration regulations have fundamentally altered the DNA of racing. We aren't just looking at cars with, different aerodynamic wings. We are analyzing machines that harvest and deploy electrical energy in a way that demands a completely different psychological and physical approach from the driver.
Yeah, it's a whole new game.
It really is. It's rewriting the grid right before our eyes.
And sitting right at the absolute pinnacle of that newly rewritten grid is KIMI Antonelli. I mean, let's explode right into this because Antonelli just delivered an undeniable 10 out of 10 weekend.
Oh, absolutely flawless.
He started from pole position, controlled the pace from the front, managed the safety car restarts like a 10-year veteran, and became the first Italian winner in what...
Insane. The rear brakes are essentially entirely electronic now. Managing that regenerative braking while balancing the gap to the cars behind it. It's like solving a Rubik's Cube while driving at 200 miles per hour. Yeah. Yet, he didn't put a single tire wrong. No lockups, no frantic radio calls, just cold, calculated perfection.
It was chilling to watch. I look at this Mercedes and it feels like they've, cracked the code to gravity while everyone else is still figuring out how wheels work. They are a shark among minnows right now.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, look at George Russell. He had a terrible start from the front row, dropped back to fourth behind the Ferraris, spent laps trapped in the turbulent, dirty air coming off the cars ahead, which, as you know, usually destroys tire grip.
Oh, totally shreds them.
Yeah. And the car's underlying performance still allowed him to salvage a P2 finish.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we're talking about Mercedes, we have to talk about Lewis Hamilton.
We certainly do. Because what the data from China showed us was the undeniable renaissance of a 7-time world champion.
He finished P3, but the body language tells a much bigger story than the podium.
Oh, 100%. After a miserable couple of years where you could literally see the frustration radiating off him in the paddock, Hamilton is smiling again. He blitzed off the line, led the race for a few laps, showed extreme aggression, and looks deeply, instinctively connected to this new 2026 machine.
You can see that connection clearly in his steering inputs. I mean, the previous generation of ground effect cars never quite suited his preference for a sharp, totally predictable front end.
Right, they were always a bit sluggish for him.
Exactly, they always felt a bit vague on turn in.
Mm.
But this 2026 Mercedes, he trusts it implicitly. He's throwing the car into the apex of the corners with a level of violent confidence we just haven't seen in years.
It's like the vintage Lewis is back.
He really is. He's not holding back or nursing the car through the technical sectors. He's attacking them. Seeing him battle wheel to wheel with that kind of joy is a monumental storyline for the season.
But I have to wonder, can anyone actually catch this Mercedes? Because from where I'm sitting, they look totally untouchable.
Well, if we look purely at the telemetry data across the weekend, the Ferrari SF26 is the undeniable second force right now.
Okay, second force, sure.
Now, Yes, Mercedes is still a few tenths of a second faster per lap in clean air, but Ferrari has engineered a machine that is a lethal threat in very specific critical conditions.
Explain that to me, because in Formula One, a few tenths of a lap might as well be a different time zone. How does Ferrari bridge that gap?
It really comes down to how they've packaged their power unit.
Mm.
Ferrari's efficiency in medium and slow-speed corners is exceptional. They are generating immense mechanical grip from the suspension and chassis. But the crucial factor is their use of a brand new, significantly smaller turbocharger.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the specific design minimizes turbo lag almost entirely, providing incredible, snappy, off-the-line response. It gives them a profound advantage out of tight traction zones, like the hairpin in Shanghai. Because of this architectural choice, I predict Ferrari could genuinely challenge for the win at tracks like Monaco, Japan, or Miami.
Wait, hold on. Let me challenge that. Doesn't a significantly smaller turbocharger come with a severe top speed penalty on those massive straights?
It does, yes.
Down that 1.2-kilometer back straight in Shanghai, aren't they just sitting ducks once the trailing car opens up their drag reduction system, the DRS flap, for a speed boost?
That is the exact compromise they made, and it's a brilliant question. Yes, their engine clips its top speed earlier than the Mercedes. But because their mechanical grip out of the traction zones is so immense, they exit the slow corners 3 or 4 car lengths ahead of everyone else.
Oh, I see.
By the time Mercedes hits their superior top speed at the end of the straight, the overtaking opportunity is already over. The Ferrari is already braking for the next corner.
Man, that acceleration was wild to watch off the start line. And it led to an incredibly intense on-track battle between the Ferrari teammates themselves. Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, who ended up finishing P4, were going wheel-to-wheel for multiple laps.
It was so close.
I have to push back on Ferrari's pit wall management here, though. Aren't they playing with fire, letting them race like that? We've seen inter-team battles end in carbon fiber confetti so many times.
Oh, it is a massive calculated risk, for sure. But you have to look at team principal Fred Vasseur's perspective here. Vasseur...
We're throwing a high-speed party at the front of the pack. The back of the grid looked like a horror movie.
It really did.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks. We have to pivot and talk about the Woking disaster. McLaren, the undisputed dominators of 2025, scored exactly 0 points.
It is a staggering fall from grace. It's one thing to show up to a new regulation era lacking aerodynamic pace, But what happened to McLaren in China was a catastrophic operational and mechanical failure.
A double DNS. Did not start.
That's brutal.
Lando Norris qualified 6th, Oscar Piastri qualified 5th, and neither of them even saw the 5 red lights go out. The sources cite massive electronic failures on both cars. How does a Formula One team completely fry 2 cars before the race even begins?
Well, it ties directly back to those 2026 regulations we discussed earlier. The new rules require these cars to harvest and deploy nearly 3 times the electrical energy of the previous generation.
Right.
The sheer electrical current running through the internal systems of these cars is astronomical. McLaren's wiring looms and electronic control units simply couldn't handle the unprecedented thermal load. They suffered cascading short circuits.
That is devastating.
It is. For Piastri, this is his 2nd race in a row without completing a single competitive lap. The crisis at Woking is immediate and severe. They don't just have a pace deficit, they have a critical reliability flaw deeply embedded in their car's central nervous system.
And they aren't the only giants tumbling down the mountain. Red Bull is living a waking nightmare right now.
Oh, yeah.
Max Verstappen had a terrible sprint race, an awful launch in the Grand Prix, fought his way up to P6 like an absolute warrior, and then, boom, suffered a did-not finish from a sudden reliability issue.
Just heartbreaking for him.
And his teammate Sergio Perez was equally nowhere. Checo finished down in P17 after a lap 1 touch with Bottas. It was a complete disaster class.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Red Bull's issue isn't just the brand new 2026 power unit, which, they are building in-house for the first time.
Yeah, the Ford partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, building a completely new engine infrastructure from scratch is a monumental task, and there are obvious growing pains there. But the blaring alarm bell is the chassis itself.
The chassis from Red Bull.
Exactly. The car fundamentally lacks aerodynamic balance. It lacks grip. It lacks the minimum competitiveness required to even fight at the front.
I have to interject here because this is Red Bull we are talking about, the aerodynamic wizards of the modern era. But driving this new Red Bull is like trying to balance a broomstick on your finger in the middle of a windstorm.
That's a perfect analogy.
The aerodynamic center of pressure, that invisible point where all the downforce pushes the car into the track, it keeps shifting unpredictably. Why is the car so nervous? And more importantly, Max Verstappen does not have the patience to drive a temperamental tractor.
No, he doesn't. And you hit the nail on the head with a shifting center of pressure. The 2026 rules changed the ground effect floor dimensions, making them narrower, and Red Bull's design philosophy seems to stall out at high yaw angles.
Meaning when they turn.
Meaning, when the car is actively turning, the downforce suddenly detaches. And you can see the result of that unpredictability on the track. Verstappen was visibly frustrated, violently overcorrecting the steering wheel, pushing the car beyond its physical limits just to stay in the lower points-paying positions.
You could literally see him wrestling it.
Yeah. Red Bull is now fighting a brutal current. They aren't just trying to engineer a fix for a bad car. They are fighting to keep their star driver mentally motivated when the machinery underneath him fundamentally rejects his driving style.
It is surreal to see him struggling in the midfield muck. But, while Verstappen is fighting a chassis that fundamentally rejects the new era rules, teams that historically struggled are suddenly finding immense stability. The midfield was pure mayhem out there, and the rookies were actively throwing elbows.
Let's talk about Ollie Beerman's masterclass.
That's a phenomenal drive.
He drags his Alpine to a heroic P5 finish, and he is completely, comprehensively outclassing his veteran teammate Esteban Ocon. Beerman's performance was clinical. He started 10th, navigated the early lap chaos perfectly, and ended up leading the midfield train. But what really stands out from the telemetry is how he handled the intense pressure from behind.
Oh, this is the craziest stat of the entire weekend.
Yeah.
The sources show that Bearman kept charging Max Verstappen.
Essentially baiting Verstappen to catch right up to his gearbox.
Oh, so he lured him into the dirty air.
Exactly. He pulled Verstappen into his aerodynamic wake, which overheated the Red Bull's front tires. Then, as soon as they hit the long straight, Beerman dumped 100% of his stored battery power. Even with Verstappen opening his DRS flap for less air resistance, Beerman had so much electrical acceleration that he completely neutralized the slipstream advantage. To execute that strategy flawlessly, without a single lockup or missed apex under the pressure of a three-time world champion, that is veteran maturity from a driver who has barely started his career.
I am officially buying a first-class ticket on the Bearman hype train, honestly. But his teammate, Esteban Ocon, had a very different kind of day. Ocon got slapped with a harsh 10-second penalty after making an impatient error and spinning out Williams' Franco Colapinto.
Yeah, that was messy.
It was a desperate dive bomb, completely unnecessary, and it ruined what was shaping up to be a brilliant race for the Argentine driver.
It was a severe lack of spatial awareness and judgment from Ocon. I mean, in these 2026 cars, because so much of the braking force comes from the electrical motor harvesting energy at the rear axle, the braking zones are incredibly unpredictable.
Right, because of the regen.
Yeah. If you stamp on the brakes offline, where there's less rubber built up on the track, the rear tires will instantly snap into a lockup. Ocon tried a 2024 overtaking move in a 2026 car. He misjudged the rear locking threshold, threw away his own points finish, and severely compromised Colapinto.
But Colapinto, the guy survives the literal torpedo, his car is visibly damaged, he loses a massive amount of time, is forced to make an unscheduled pit stop on lap 32, and what does he do?
He fights back.
He puts his head down, manages the degradation, and fights all the way back to score a brilliant, hard-earned point in P10.
Colapinto's psychological resilience is what we really should be highlighting here. He was racing on a circuit he doesn't know well, dealing with a floor that was missing aerodynamic load from the crash, and yet he showed masterful tire management in the final stint. He didn't let the frustration of the collision derail his focus.
The midfield order is just so entirely unpredictable right now. I mean, Alpine and Racing Bulls are surging up the timing sheets. Pierre Gasly secured an amazing P6 for Alpine. He had the new upgrade package on his car this weekend, proving their pace in Bahrain was absolutely not a fluke.
No, they're looking strong.
They have a genuinely solid aerodynamic platform. And meanwhile, over at Racing Bulls, Liam Lawson finishes P7, and rookie Arvid Lindblad comes home P12. They are actively, consistently beating the senior Red Bull team.
I have to say, it is a beautiful, chaotic irony to see the junior squad outperforming the reigning Constructors' champions.
It really highlights the vast disparity in chassis development right now. The Racing Bulls car is stable, it's predictable, and doesn't suffer from the shifting center of pressure that plagues the senior team.
It's just a better baseline.
Exactly. This stable platform allows their young drivers to extract the maximum lap time without fear of the car snapping on them. Lindblad, for instance, executed an incredible 40-lap stint on the hard compound tires. That requires a chassis that treats its rubber incredibly well. Which brings us to a team whose car is definitely not treating its tires well. Carlos Sainz managed an absolute miracle in Shanghai, dragging an overweight, severely compromised Williams to P9.
Sainz drove a near-perfect tactical race to extract those 2 points. He capitalized perfectly on the safety car timing, nailed his restarts, and defended the inside lines flawlessly. But, we cannot let those golden points mask the deep engineering crisis happening at Williams right now. The car is significantly overweight.
And let's quickly explain why that matters for the listener. When a car carries excess mass, every time you turn the steering wheel at high speed, that heavy chassis wants to keep traveling straight.
Basic physics, yeah.
Exactly. That creates massive lateral sliding across the surface of the tire, which generates extreme friction and literally melts the rubber. Sainz had to manage that melting rubber for 56 agonizing laps.
Precisely. Sainz is applying a world-class driver's Band-Aid to a fundamental engineering flaw. The excess mass destroys lap time through the corners and shreds the Pirelli tires prematurely.
Speaking of fundamental engineering flaws, we have to look at the Aston Martin garage. I mean, what a disaster. Lance Stroll retires on lap 10 with a sudden mechanical failure, just pulling over completely dead in turn 2.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
And
The tunnels that suck the car to the ground.
the porpoising is back. Essentially, yes. Aston Martin's floor appears to be stalling and reattaching at high speeds, creating a rapid, violent bouncing effect. It's an acoustic resonance that literally shakes the suspension components until they vibrate apart. Aston Martin's completely lost in this new regulatory framework, and with the relentless pace of the upcoming calendar, they have very little time to design and manufacture a new floor.
Man, what a mess. So what does this all mean for the listener tracking this season? We've looked at the terrifyingly precise Mercedes, the totally broken systems at Red Bull and McLaren, and a midfield that currently resembles a Wild West shootout.
Yeah.
I think the overarching takeaway is that the 2026 regulations have delivered exactly what the governing body promised. Completely overturned hierarchies, engineering chaos, and raw, unpredictable racing where absolutely nothing is guaranteed. It is a profound paradigm shift for the sport. And it leaves us with a critical, almost chilling thought to ponder as we look ahead to the next race. With McLaren in the garage, Red Bull in the gravel, and Hamilton grinning on the podium, are we witnessing just a chaotic start to new regulations or the permanent death of the old empire and the dawn of the Antonelli-BEARMAN generation?
Oh, that gives me chills. What a question to leave hanging in the air. Listener, you are going to want to be glued to your screens for the rest of this season because the DRS zone is the only place you need to be to make sense of this madness. Make sure you follow the deep dive right now on all platforms. Head over to our TikTok, check out the Instagram, and hit subscribe on YouTube to stay in the absolute center of the F1 hurricane. Until next time, keep your foot to the floor.